Last year, when I spoke at this conference virtually, Ontario was in a much different situation. But thanks to the collective efforts of Ontarians across the province, we've seen the restrictions lifted cautiously and life begin to return to a new normal. While the pandemic has introduced a lot of uncertainty, it has not distracted us from our government's core mission. As a government, it is our job to create the right conditions for success. And a big part of that entails making the right choices today to help Ontarians meet the challenges of the future. Our government believes that the foundation of our province's prosperity depends on getting shovels in the ground on much-needed infrastructure projects, because it's economic growth, not tax hikes or spending cuts, that will put the province back on solid footing. Now, the previous Liberal government ignored the growing infrastructure deficit that was facing our province for so long. Now, from time to time, they would say the right things, or they would acknowledge the need to improve our transportation infrastructure, but they never followed through on fixing it. But our government has brought an end to that inaction. Under Premier Ford's leadership, we have a plan that will build our economy by delivering long overdue critical infrastructure projects like highways, roads, bridges, hospitals, and schools. With Ontario's population expected to grow by about 30% over the next 20 years, the case for building has never been stronger. To help put that number into perspective, that means that 1 million people will join us here in the Greater Golden Horseshoe every 5 years. That's 200,000 new arrivals a year, a staggering vote of confidence in the endless opportunities available in Ontario. People want to live and work here, and they want to build a better life for themselves and for their families. And that is a great thing. But it's critical that we have the infrastructure in place to keep up with the demands of our growing region. And I am very proud to be part of a government that is committing over $148 billion to expand Ontario's infrastructure over the next 10 years. Our plan to tackle Ontario's infrastructure deficit starts with getting shovels in the ground and making smart, targeted investments today. At the Ministry of Transportation, that means addressing gridlock. Our historic infrastructure investments includes more than $22 billion to support the planning and construction of highway expansion and rehabilitation projects across the province. Last fiscal year, we committed $2.6 billion to expand and repair provincial highways, roads, and bridges. This funding included over $763 million to expand the province's highways and bridges, and almost $1.5 billion in rehabilitation projects. Combined, these investments were estimated to support nearly 16,000 direct and indirect jobs. In addition, as part of our government's fall economic statement, Minister Peter Bethlenfalvy announced the investment of an additional $474 million over a five-year period to address key large bridge rehabilitation projects in southern Ontario. To keep our historic infrastructure investments moving forward, our government has developed a coordinated approach to transportation planning that addresses the unique needs of every corner of our province. Over the past 3 years, we've released 3 regional transportation plans, one for southwestern Ontario, one for northern Ontario, and one for the Greater Golden Horseshoe. And we're also preparing to unveil soon our transportation plan for eastern Ontario. These plans form a blueprint for future action in each region to expand highways and transit services, to support growth, create economic opportunities, and improve travel options. And they also include hundreds of near-term actions to transform our transportation network. And together, they will form a single long-term vision for our province. With 1 million people moving to the Greater Golden Horseshoe region every 5 years, we need a highway system that is able to accommodate this continuous growth. To support the region's growing population, we are advancing the design for the Bradford Bypass, a northern freeway connection between the highways 400 and 404. Now, the need for the Bradford Bypass was first identified over 30 years ago, and it only has become more urgent since then. Decades of growing gridlock on the 400 and the 404 have hurt not only communities in the GTA, but they've also made life harder for communities of Bradford and East Gwillimbury. But the benefits of the project go much further than just relieving gridlock. We expect that the project will generate $274 million in annual real GDP and support more than 2,600 jobs per year on average during construction. I am so pleased with the positive feedback and the support that we have received from residents, local businesses, and farmers who have thanked us for moving ahead with the Bradford Bypass. We are also advancing planning for the new Highway 413 to support drivers in York Region, Peel, and Halton. Highway 413 will run 52 kilometers from Highway 400 in the east to the 401 and 407 interchanges in the west. Drivers traveling the entire route will save about 30 minutes during rush hour compared to the time it would take them to make the same trip on Highways 401 and 400. We also expect Highway 413 to support more than 3,500 jobs during each year of construction and generate up to $350 million of real GDP. We know that this project will make a massive difference for the people who live or work near the route. For them, Highway 413 could mean up to an extra hour of time each day, or up to 5 hours back in their week. These time savings are meaningful and will make the difference between calling home to say that you're stuck in traffic and being able to sit down to dinner with your family and tucking your kids into bed. Now, as I mentioned, I was just in Northern Ontario, where I also got a great deal of positive feedback on an announcement that I made only a few weeks ago, our 2+1 pilot projects in North Bay. I was so pleased to announce the 2+1 pilot projects. I think that they are a great example of how government can collaborate with experts on how to solve real problems that affect our local communities. And I want to thank Mark Wilson and the GEMS group for their dedicated advocacy, and I am so pleased that we are moving forward with this important project. But to be able to meet the demands of the future, we need to build more than roads and highways. To address the transit infrastructure deficit left behind by the previous government, we also need to build reliable, fast, and frequent rapid transit across the province's busiest corridors. Over the next 10 years, we are investing more than $61 billion to transform public transit in Ontario. These investments include our priority transit projects for the Greater Toronto Area, which together form the largest subway expansion of its kind in Canadian history. It also includes GO Rail expansion, which will transform a system built for rush hour commuting into one with all-day, two-way service on core segments of the network. Our bold vision for transit will also stimulate economic growth and create good-paying jobs. For every $1 billion that we invest in transit, we support over 10,000 jobs during the investment. We boost Ontario's real GDP by another $1 billion, provide hundreds of millions of dollars in time savings to commuters, and significantly reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. Through our ambitious slate of projects, our government is helping to build the transit and transportation networks that people need to achieve their goals. And our plan, with the support of OGRA is how we will ensure that the province emerges from this pandemic stronger than ever before.